tātou e whakahuhui mai nei tēnei rangi tonu. I tika ana me mihi kia tātou, tuku atu ana tō tātou nei, Karakia he koro ai mā tātou i tēnei. Mino i tātou. Tēnei no te wā e pai tuku ana ngā reo whakamoimiti, reo whakawhetai atu ana ki a koe. Ino i ana mātou ki a koe, kia tau hoki o mana ki ta ngō māramatanga ki rungi a mātou, e whakahuhui mai nei tēnei ata tonu. Hei aha, hei oranga anō mā tātou nei whānui putano. Tēnei anō te toko iti, te tuku atu ana tēnei te ofofo, te paimarire, e koro ai mā tātou tēnei rangi, rire hau paimarire. O te akanga whakaora māramatanga e te atua. Tō mātou ki ngi tuhei te pōtatau, te whero, te tuawhitua o te ki te ona whare. Ki ngā panina pauaruna rawa kore na tīna ne māwiwi tiana. Ke whai oranga no mā tātou nei whānui putano i te motu nei, te rangi nei. Nā hu te gloria. Nā hu te gloria. Nā hu te gloria. Rire. Paimari kia tātou.
Kakimio ki whea, kakimio ki tai, kakimio ki whea, kakimio ki ta. Kakimio ki whea, kakimio ki raro. Kakimio ki whea, kakimio ki runga. Kakimio ki whea, kakimio ia koe e o ngā manumana tini pai iu. Nō reira tūtuko ana i ngā inoi kia iho ngā manu. Ke tau hoki ana manaakitanga ki runga ki tō tātou kingi po te tau te peropero te tuawhitu. Me te pai o te nākau te rongo i ana kōrero nāni whakatakato ki mua te ao Māori. E nana hira kia whakakotahi i runga ngā huatanga o te kāwanatanga e pānei tātou. E whakatīnana nai tērā kōrero kingi tu hei te kingo te kōtahitanga. Nō reira ānui te mihi kingi, tērā te kāhuiri ki whānui tonu pai mairi. O tātou mate, tō mate. Rātou ko hinga te wiki te marama te tau, e kore ware, nō reira moi mai rā koutou, i roto te rangi mai, tērā no te tehi marama nau ki Mania Poto, haere o mātou hoa, tūtahanga ki te tātou Bill Anderson. Aheno, o koutou mate. Ora kāti te wāhi ki rātou. Tēnā tātou te hunga ora. Tēnei ka mihi atu, te kaunihera o Waikato. E mihi ana. Nau mai haramai ki te whare. Kei konei te chair Ham Story. Ana, tō mātou Councillor Smith, Bruce Clarkson. Kei konei. I runga te karanga o te rā, te kaupapa te rā. Nā, hara tēnei te mihi mana whenua, ko koutou tēnei, e mohe ana kei wainganui mātou i tō koutou rohe. Arā, te kōpū mani o kirikiri roa, kei runga. Kirikiri roa pā, kei te taha. Te rapa pā, kei tua. Nō reira me ki e tāwharautia nei, tēnei kaunihera i ngā ringa o koutou tūpuna. Nō reira, tēnei ka mihi whakaiti nei, tēnā koutou. He whakatau noa, kia tātou kei mua te aroaro ngā mahi. E whai huai te rohe katoa taino ki a tātou tāngata. Nō reira, kare kume roa ngā mihi. Tēnā koutou. Huri noa tō tātou whare. Tēnā tātou katoa. Hei ahara. He mahi mōrunga I te marae e tū. E ko te tūi, e ko te tū. E ko te hono ki te kotahi tam, ki te kingi Māori e tū. E tū nei I runga I te mana Māori, motuhake e tū nei. Whiti, whiti, whiti ki te tika, whiti ki te ora, whiti ki te rangi Māori e titia I ho au. Au e, ka te hono tātai hono rātou te hunga mati ki rātou, o te rā tātou te pita ora, tēnā tātou katoa kei roro kahuri.
Tēnā tātou. Tēnā koe Don, me Roger, te whakatūwhera tō tātou hui I tēnei ata. Thank you for the way that we've opened today's hui. As I was reflecting on coming today, I was thinking about where we started as a term of Te Ara Tauda, whakakitenga reps in this JMA. And it wasn't a good place, to be honest. Early on, we had a bit of a dust up in terms of the treatment of our king at the opening of this whare. So it's quite moving actually to see how far regional council have come and how we've grown from that position that we were in 2020. So thank you for opening what will be the final hui of our term of Te Ara Tauda and the current members of Te Whakakitenga this morning. We've got quite a full agenda, so thank you, Marley, for pushing us to have this hui today. Our term was supposed to finish in September, but we thought, no, we'll try and get one more in and try and get a few things over the line. So we do have a full agenda today. I'll chair today's hui, but before we get into it, Pamela, do you want to make any opening comments?
Thank you, Jackie, and just want to echo the sentiments that you've shared in terms of the way we have chosen to engage in this work over the last couple of years. I respect the leadership that you bring to this table, and thank you for acknowledging how a regional council has stepped up to the mark, in my view, as to the respect and the level of willing engagement that hopefully you see us bring to these types of conversations now. And so just I'm pleased that we have squeezed in another one. As you say, there's always more work to do, and the willingness to come together and turn our heads to that work is a real testament to the joint commitment that I think that you see around this table. I certainly do. So, Yoda.
Dave, you've got some health and safety direction to give us, I believe.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for attending today. This is a regular item that we will be including in the agendas moving forward. Our practice will generally be to take it as read and field questions, but for today, given that none of you have possibly seen or heard this before, I'll quickly run through a few key points. Should an emergency occurs that requires us to leave the building, the nearest emergency exit is through the main chamber door and out onto the footpath on the right. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please let me know and I'll be happy to assist. Please do not use the lifts. If you happen to be upstairs, there are fire exits located around the building and there will be wardens to assist you in where to go. And please remain clear of the building until we're given the all clear by the fire service or appropriate warden. If we have trouble in reception for any reason, there is a blue duress light and you may be asked to remain in the chamber or go through to the councillors' lounge. And lastly, there is a defibrillator in reception next to the lift.
and should it be required. We've got some emergency instructions, some flip charts in the councillors' lounge and the entranceway, and if you want to make yourself familiar with those, they're there for your convenience. Thank you.
The question, if I may, Madam Chair, where's the blue light? No, that's a video.
Got one just
You got right there in front of you.
right there in front of us.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Just there.
just there.
I know. It's like, I know there's a blue light somewhere.
Thank you, Dave, on our last hui for telling us about the health and safety for the building. So the intention is to try and finish today's hui by 12. We always sort of extend over that, but we'll try and keep it tight today. So calling for apologies, we've had a few come in from Waikato Tainui side. So Norman Hill, Huirama Matatahi and Moana Hamana will send their apologies. And Jen Nicol has also sent her apologies. And Tipper, can't point. So can I have a mover that we accept those apologies? Donald, seconder, Noel. All in favour? Carried. So just confirmation of the agenda. We've all had the agenda for quite a while. Are there any changes or additions that anyone would like to make? What correction?
Oh, no, that's minutes. That's next item.
Yep. I'll second. All in favour? Right, carried. Disclosures of interest. So we've all had the disclosures of interest pre-circulated. I provided some updates to both secretariats. So those are there. Are there any specific disclosures that people might want to raise on the agenda items that we have today? Nope, can't point. So moving to the confirmation of minutes. We've all had a chance to read them. I've made some comment around how you guys record your minutes, which is very brief. Are there any amendments to the minutes?
Item 2 records Bruce as an apology, and then item 6 has him seconding a motion. Apparently, having listened to the tape, thank you, Dave, for sending it to me. It was me.
Right. So can I have a mover that the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of September, subject to the amendment that's been noted, be confirmed as a correct record? Mover, Jocelyn. Seconder, Pamela. All in favour? Against? Carried. So we're moving into the first item, substantive item on our agenda, update on the Freshwater Policy Review Program from Peter. Kia ora, Peter. Seems like a very long way away.
It does.
We've got half an hour on our agenda for this item. Peter?
Yes, so kia ora tātou. I'm Peter Wishart. I'm with the Freshwater Policy team with the Regional Council. I think you've all got a report on your order paper there. Before I perhaps start speaking to that, I'd just like to preface it with the comments about before, at least after the report was written. Of course, we've had the coalition agreements and some of the changes which we are unaware of what the implications are going to be yet have still to be made, and we wait to see what's going to be happening in the new year. For those who perhaps aren't aware of the proposed changes around freshwater, it's proposed that the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management be replaced. That's coming from both ACT and the New Zealand First coalition partners. And the ACT party is also looking to rebalance in terms of the National Policy Statement, just what the meaning of Te Mana o Te Wai is. Now, I've got no idea what rebalancing means. I was fortunate to be with the Taio Forum on Tuesday, and we sort of kicked this tin down the road, and well, basically we're waiting to see what's coming out of Wellington in the new year. Okay, so what I'm going to be speaking to, I guess, is a bit of a journey. It's where we have come from, why we're doing it. But as I say, in terms of just prefacing the report, in terms of just what's been happening recently. So in terms of the work that we've been undertaking, it's in regard to the National Policy Statement of Freshwater Management, the 2020 iteration. The intention there is to address the decline in the quality of the water quality in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We've been engaging with the communities. We've been engaging with tangata whenua, with sector groups, and also with our JMA partners, with our iwi partners. There's been 2 rounds to date, and in the report, there is hyperlinks there, but I don't know whether you can feed them off the report. But both rounds, we now have a report which have gone to our council and are now available on the website. In regard to the round 2 wānanga, with Waikato Tainui, we had 3 engagements at Whangaroa, Hamilton and Tuakau. And the discussions there revolved around Te Mana o Te Wai and what that would mean. The long-term visions that folk held for their wai, and also perhaps looking at the outcomes, the anticipated outcomes in respect of those water bodies. Perhaps now a little bit superseded, but a letter has gone to the JMA partners in terms of co-governance arrangements, possible co-governance arrangements. There's been some thinking within council, of course, how that might work, but now, well, at the time, it was time to go out and seek feedback from JMA partners. So that letter still sits with the partners. Given that the direction will probably involve some form of review of the regional plan, it's probably still worth keeping that on the table and having the discussions. And I think probably one of the good things that might come out of this process is there will be more time to be able to sort of discuss and decide on the best way forward. I mean, obviously we have the JMA agreements, and I also need to add, of course, we've got Te Ture Whai Mana. So in some ways, in terms of the Waikato and Waipa catchments, we've got a very strong document instrument, which of course sits above the NPSFM in terms of if there was any disagreement. Te Ture Whai Mana would be the predominant instrument. But of course, we're dealing with this mahi over the whole of the Rohi, which means, of course, we're looking at Coromandel and Hauraki, who are not yet through their treaty settlement process. So in some ways, good luck, good management, seizing the initiative, and we have for the Waikato and the Waipa, we have Te Ture Whai Mana. In the meantime, work continues. Staff are looking to work with the regional plan and the regional policy statement. And of course, these are the 2 documents where the freshwater provisions were going to be reviewed and amended. So staff are working on that in regards to water quality, quantities, looking at structures, disturbances to the beds of lakes and rivers, and damming and detention, discharges, and basically the whole gamut where freshwater is involved. One of the possible proposals, and this is ready for council to determine, is whether we perhaps broaden that out and have a wider review, given that there might be more time looking at other aspects, which include geothermal and air quality. But that is yet to be decided, and that's just something which is just being used. It hasn't certainly been decided on. One thing which we have been very pleased with is the Ngāti Taronga Working Party. There is an intention, or well, there was an intention to convene that early in the new year. That will now have to wait, of course, and to see, again, in terms of the reasons I've just canvassed, in terms of what the coalition agreements mean. But we certainly see that as a vehicle which will have much merit in terms of whatever mahi we proceed with the regional plan and the regional policy statement as continuing. We're already thinking about how to support the Ngāti Raumatonga with professional expertise, a bit like with the Healthy Rivers Waiora plan change, where we had Billy Bruff, who was assisting the parties in that regard. If I can just move on, in terms of the Waikato Regional Plan, that was notified back in August 18th of this year. Submissions have closed. I can report that we've got 107 submissions that have a substantive basis to them. All told, we've got over 1,200 where we had a pro forma submission that came from a group calling themselves Legacy. That's Legacy with an SEA on the end. So all told, as I say, we've got well over 1,200, but as I say, that in terms of substantive submissions, there's 107 submissions there. Staff are currently collating those, and they'll be notified further in terms of going out for further submissions in the new year. In terms of Plan Change 1, I know that the forum was interested on Tuesday. I gave a very brief update because the next order on the agenda is after I left was indeed Plan Change 1. So I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't already know. Is that the hearing is now concluded with Judge David. I forget his last name now. I should know. Is considering the decision. There's possibly going to be an interim decision early in the new year or in the second quarter. So we just wait to see what comes out of that. There are implications, of course, which we are trying to determine with the NPCF being readjusted, just how that's going to merge with PC1. And look, that concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to take any questions that the committee might have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Peter. I'll just open it up to the table for questions. Noel.
So just on this subject, it came before council last week, as Pamela could attest to, in that because of the unknowns with the coalition agreement, council has decided to regroup, I think was the word we settled on, rather than pause or whatever. So we're just delaying until we actually know where this is going, rather than continue going down a path that will be later shown as a waste of work. I do not believe that the work that's been done to date will be a waste, because the government cannot, in my view, and it would be reprehensible if they did, was to throw out the baby and the bathwater. So the work that's been done will go towards something, and because I think we all want the same outcome with our water. So yeah, good report, and I think encapsulates where we are, but the reality is, because of the unknown, it's just on a slow journey until we regroup and go forward. So thanks.
Donald.
Kia ora through the chair. Just want to sort of give a bit of a mihi for the mahi that's been undertaken and done through there, and the voices that you've actually captured. So it's quite good to see some of the rangatahi voice too in that space. So just a partai around with regards to fresh water. Is that just the fresh water itself, or is it like pieces of it, as in like the clam? Like, is that in the space or no?
The NPSFM talks about integrated management. So basically, kai to kai, from the ridgeline down to the sea. So indeed, what happens on the land affects the water, as you well know. So it's an holistic approach to the resource management. It'll be interesting to see what the provisions of the amended document actually say, but I can't see that going in terms of integrated management. So what happens, as I say, what happens on the land affects fresh water.
So my question would be, is that a different space in the regional council that would fit, or would it connect somehow with the freshwater?
It would certainly connect. I mean, in terms of the way the regional plan is structured, we've got the water elements, but there's land, there is land and water. So that's the actual section. So the recognition and how the plan works, again, is that integrated approach to resource management in terms of both land and water.
Nice. And just to reinforce the statement of the mahi done and the data and information and the connecting with all of our constituents and whānau and people through the process you've gone through, you know, I think that's really awesome. And so in what we're talking about when we did our mihi in the Karakia this morning, the miro ma, the miro whiro, the miro whango, iwi whānui, that's the whole collected acknowledgement in achieving that goal together. So if you didn't, just sharing the meaning of that in the Karakia and that we sort of, the inoi that we requested, that we actually, the request be to include and work together in that space. So it's what I'm sort of sharing is that it hasn't been anything new. This has always been the request to mahi tahi together and support the acknowledgement that all the mahi done is a good foundation moving forward. And it is probably a reset to see what it looks like with our teams together as a collective for the well-being of the environment, the people, etc., etc. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Don. Just some questions from me, or questions, comments. I guess our saving grace for Waikato is Te Ture Whaimana. And so a lot of the elements of MPS FM really just made those provisions extend broader than the Waikato River catchment. So I agree, Noel, that I would be very surprised if the work is wasted, because we need that work to better give effect to Te Ture Whaimana anyway. So it would be, I guess, good as part of your council's regathering, if that's considered, I suppose, in the timing. I know that a lot of the timeframes have been driven by central government timeframes, so, and it has felt rushed from our perspective, just with the scale of legislative review going on across the board. So I can't see that being of any harm, except if it's dragged out too long. You know, if we look at PC1, what has that been? 7, 8 years in the making, 10 years in the making, and, you know, we still don't have it bedded in. So I guess just acknowledging that Te Ture Whaimana makes those provisions that you're working to embed necessary anyway. And I guess further to that, just thinking about the co-governance elements, you know, we're here because of our river settlement. PC1 incorporated co-management, co-governance because of our settlement. So the coalition agreement, I would expect, has no real impact on us here in the Waikato. So just wanted to really make those statements. I did have some questions around how you're finding engagement. Just looking at the numbers of people who are turning up to hui, you know, are you happy that you're getting a reasonable representation of our people? I think the Taiao hui is a good start to try and get better reach and better penetration into our kaitiaki. But just, yeah, wondering what your thoughts are around the level of engagement that you've had to date.
I'll concur with everything that you've said to date, particularly around Te Ture Whaimana and just the importance, and in fact the increasing importance of the JMA agreement, as I understand that there's going to be no attempt to try and wind back any of the settlements which have happened to date. I come from Thames. I'm sort of worried about my whānau and whananga over in Hauraki and Coromandel in terms of their settlement, which has not yet gone through the House. But anyway, in terms of engagement, look, there's been a lot of passion. We know that people have been so busy. I mean, there's all the other mahi which is on the table as well. People have turned up, they've shared their views. asked some of the hard questions. But I think perhaps one of the silver linings of this process is going to be perhaps we will have more time to be able to just have more considered conversations and what have you, and perhaps develop structures and frameworks which can take advantage of that situation. I mean, I found that the presentation and I was invited to the Tayo Forum on Tuesday, which I found that very useful, and it was, yeah, it was good. There were good questions that came out, but you didn't feel pressured with the time and what have you. So I think that, as I say, we probably will be able to spend more time having these conversations we do, given that we're dealing with more than just the Waikato and Waipa catchments. We've got all of Hauraki, Coromandel, and the West Coast, so there are a large number of entities that we have to deal with. That's just not only tangata whenua, but also in terms of community groups and sector groups and what have you as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I'm just thinking about, I guess, how to try and get more fulsome engagement in the provisions, because the presentations that we get here are really, this is the process we're following, these are the timeframes that we're trying to achieve, this is generally the engagement that we're having. I think it might be useful to organise some hui on the actual provisions so that people have got something to talk into when you're ready, but no doubt the team have already raised that with you.
They have, and look, the intention, especially with the Mātauranga, was to start bringing the provisions forward and start working through those and taking advice on how best to deal with the wider groupings and what have you. We were very concerned about the timeframes, because I didn't mention, but we were supposed to have a notified plan out by December next year. And next year is almost here. So the timeframes were certainly going to be very tight. But as I say, hopefully we're going to have a bit more time to less haste, more speed, or whatever the old terminology is.
Kia ora, Peter. No.
Excuse me, a question. Would it be fair to say that average Joe public, be it Maori or anyone else, are not attending these meetings, these hui? The interest groups are, or targeted groups are, but there's not been a lot. And this is from my observations, but I'm just seeking confirmation. The general Joe public doesn't turn up even when these are advertised.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, Councillor. I've been to several of them, and I think there was one person turned up at one, two at another, but then we had 20 at another. So again, I think sort of how the networks work in a community, and again, how busy people might be. But I mean, the feedback that we have had with the people who have turned up has been, as I say, valuable. But yeah, we'd like to perhaps come one, come all. And as I say, perhaps we've now got more time and we can put the resources in terms of making sure that, particularly as we start firming up on the provisions, which will be going in the plan, because that's where it starts to get crunchy in terms of how it impacts on people's lives, livelihoods, and their relationships that they have with the environment.
That I and some of the other councillors have asked for some information. Southland, I think it was, or Otago Regional Council, sought some information from the Auditor General as to whether we as farmers can be engaged in this process with freshwater. And we're waiting for our staff to come back with that determination or whether we have to seek ourselves permission to be involved from the Auditor General. So, yeah.
If I may, Madam Chair, in terms of numbers and what have you, the reports that I referred to do cover that offer and the appendices of how many turned up to various venues and what have you. So that those numbers are available for people who are interested.
Kia ora, Peter. If there are no further comments or questions, no. Can I get a mover that Peter's report be received? Kia ora, Donald. Seconder. No. All in favour? Against? Carried. Kia ora, Peter.
And I wish all seasons greetings and a very safe holiday period.
And to you.
See you in the new year. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Moving on to our next item, and we are running ahead of time, touch wood, it stays that way. Co-managed land strategy and implementation plan. I think this is Sarah and Nicholas. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou all, Sarah Leland, the Lower Waikato Zone Manager, and we've got Nicholas with us here today as well, and I'll let Nicholas introduce himself too.
Kia ora tātou, Nicholas Marike. Nō ngā iwi o tainui waka mai tāmaki makere ki te reo Waikato. Whakatunga ki ni nui. Kia ora whakati, Nicholas Marike. Here assisting both Waikato Tainui and Waikato Regional Council on this kaupapa.
Thanks, Nick. So the report today is to present the draft land management strategy and implementation plan. And this follows on from the earlier hui that we had in June this year, where we had Helen Ritchie there as our facilitator, working with both co-governors and staff to work through the earlier drafted versions and to seek your feedback. So following that session, we've been fortunate to have Nicholas, who has worked closely with Waikato Tainui and Regional Council staff, and taking the feedback at the facilitation session and updating those documents. So what you've got in front of you today, builds on those earlier versions and captures that feedback given. We are happy to take those reports as read, but equally we can sort of talk through a few of the, I guess, key aspects if you so wish as well.
Maybe just highlight the key aspects, Sarah and Nick.
Okay. So when I look at the strategy, it's the collective wisdom of both our folk at Waikato Regional Council at Waikato Tainui. There's been some past engagement with the staff, but also between the staff of those respective organisations and the wider whānau. And so it's a collective wisdom of bringing all the mihi that's been done today, particularly the wānanga of Whaia Helen. And also looking back over the past few years in terms of the building blocks that Sarah and her team have put in place, particularly the mapping, trying to understand what lands we're talking about, where those lands are, what's the current state of those lands. And so those are critical building blocks in order to establish a strategy and an action plan moving forward. We've tried to draw on the existing principles and the existing important elements of the Waikato River settlement rather than try and recreate something new. And so we use the principles of the Kingitanga Accord and the Waikato River settlement as our strategic PO. And from those strategic PO, we have a number of focus areas informed by all the kōrero that has been had to date. And then we have a action plan that just fishes out the key actions and tasks for each of those focus areas to move forward, move the strategy forward. We also left the door open in terms of some potential initiatives or Morai-based initiatives or special projects that can bring to life all elements of the strategy. And so, yeah, there's some BAU, some mahi that we need to do on our settlement lands, but there's also some sighting of opportunities and bringing those to light and working with our Waikato Tainui marae on these lands. Yeah.
Kia ora kōrua. Firstly, can I just say thank you for getting the work to this point. I know a lot has gone into it since June. It's been many years in the making to get this to this point. So I really just want to mihi to the staff from both organisations for getting this in front of us. I think it's really great. I would actually move that we adopt it in principle today if others were comfortable with that. I think that I've got some specific comments, but I really just wanted to say that it's great to see this in the form that it's in. I think that it sets out some really high-level priorities and strategic objectives, but I also like the implementation program that it actually sets out some priority projects, which I think is really, really useful. I might just go to my my questions or comments. So just starting at the strategy, page 38. So just in terms of some of the focus areas, I wonder whether we can be a little bit more specific in what we're trying to achieve. So for example, we will ensure access to settlement lands, and access will take into account existing and future lease arrangements. I wonder if we should put in that we want future lease arrangements to start to embed the provision of access, so that, you know, we're quite clear that this is where we might be now, but the intention is to embed those future access provisions into future lease arrangements. In the restoration focus area, just a question on who we is. Is that we will as in both parties, or is that regional council or Waikato Tainui?
Yeah, we use that collective we to be embracing.
Yeah. Because I wondered how we get to a point where WRC prioritise some of those works. So if the sites of significance to us, and we've prioritised them ourselves in terms of where investment might be made, in the same way as we prioritise, you know, steep land or erodible land, how we might look to prioritise some of the restoration activities on our sites of significance as part of your programs. Just a partai, really.
I can respond to that one. So I think, you know, looking at the implementation plan, quite a few of the, I think, initial actions are around sort of, I guess, investigating, identifying where those different priorities are. And I think once we do have that information, that's when we can look at how can we then prioritise these. Is it that we're seeking additional funding? Can we tap into some existing community partnership funding that we have? Does it connect in well with, you know, like our Ngāwai or Waikato program, for example? But I think we just really need to do a bit of a deep dive into some of those areas just to really understand what we're seeking to achieve there, and then how they align with the existing programs. And I see that being a really key step once we start working through the initial stages of the implementation plan. And I think a number of the sites, from what I understand, are recognised in the restoration strategy as well. So there's linkage there as well. Hopefully that helps answer that somewhat.
It goes some way, Sarah, for me, because I think down in the implementation level, yep, we need to investigate, determine what those priority sites might be. But it would be good to capture that we will prioritise them, or we'll be looking to prioritise them as part of the overall work that regional council do. And I am thinking about the collective and unified funding approach that regional council take to, for example, the Waikato River Authority on behalf of a whole range of landowners. And through that collective approach, you know, you secure a whole lot of funding because you're going on behalf of a whole range of landowners. How, you know, sites of significance, which are part of, you know, Te Ture Whai Mana, how that can be included in that sort of approach, not just so we're potentially securing WRC funding, but also, you know, utilising WRA funding for those priority things, as opposed to our individual whānau having to go to the WRA and trying to get funding for individual projects, which is much, much harder than if it's done as a collective.
That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that a little bit further. I've captured some notes on that one.
Awesome. Just moving into the rights of first refusal. I wondered, the second paragraph, we will look for opportunities to return land. I wonder how we make that more, strengthen those words. So we'll look for opportunities, and where they exist, we will, as opposed to, we'll look for opportunities and then maybe nothing will happen. that's a policy as part of the implementation program, including that in the policy elements. If council have a policy for disposal of lands, how you incorporate Waikato Tainui, right of first refusal in that policy. So it's not just looking for an opportunity, it's actually setting out a process to pursue that opportunity and make that a reality if we're in a position to do it.
I'll just add, yeah, hear what's been said. We'll have a little think about it and amend where required. We also have a couple of tasks, a couple of actions in the implementation plan, which brings together both organisations to actually agree and particularly outline a process on how that might happen. So the task and action and the implementation plan will definitely give effect to that that sentence there. But we'll have.
And I think just to add to that as well, some of the intent of the recent mapping work that we undertook was to look at the status of, where those settlement lands are and where council flood protection assets are located. So we do have some really good detail on that already. And there was only one sort of area of land from that which didn't have a council infrastructure located on it, which had been through the Public Works Act taken to protect that flood infrastructure. So we do have, I guess, some really good information on there. And I guess from that sort of initial look, there wasn't, I guess, areas that we were looking to dispose of that didn't have those flood assets on them, except for one area which we could potentially subdivide, which we've already actually requested some further information on that process through the property group in terms of what would be involved there if that was to be subdivided so that it separated the land from that which contains the stock bank which we currently graze. So yeah, we have done some work on that already. Hopefully that helps too.
What's the appetite to extending that provision beyond the co-managed lands? Because I guess my mind was going to all regional council lands within Aotearoa if they are surplus to council requirement, but not necessarily RFR, because if they are, then that'll trigger the RFR provisions anyway, to including those lands. So my mind did go beyond just the co-managed lands that we're talking about.
With the lands that council own in the Waikato Tainui Rohi, all of those lands are where there is flood infrastructure. So we don't have any lands where there isn't any council flood infrastructure, and that's, I guess, the rationale for having acquired that land through the Public Works Act is to be able to manage the flood infrastructure which is in place, but we don't have any additional lands which aren't used for that purpose.
No?
I'm just probably an internal question. Forgive me, but I don't recall seeing this coming through ICM at all. I don't recall it being socialised with council at all. And if I've missed that, I apologise. But my concerns would be that it needs, like, I can see recommendation 2 there. This needs to be socialised with all of council and some opportunity to input before it's finalised. And I know there's 1 or 2 that will be concerned about some of the content. I think the majority of council would probably be happy with it. But the reality is, I don't see this as, and if I'm wrong, it hasn't been socialised yet with the wider council, has it? And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to accept that.
That's my understanding, Noel. So, first and foremost, we've been working through the review of the and development of the land management strategy in accordance with the co-management agreement through this committee. But we can, if there's the recommendation or request there, that also is tabled at the Integrated Catchment Management Committee. you know, obviously that's something which can be done. You know, what we're presenting today is, you know, the draft strategy and implementation plan, and obviously firstly seeking, you know, that feedback through co-governors.
And that's why I understood the first recommendation that the report they received. Obviously, to have added the second part, I think there's one or two steps that we need to make sure that council is happy with the content, and I don't see that there's any reason why not. But I think we need to it needs to be socialised with the council through ICM or otherwise. ICM is the majority of council. So it's just rather than delivering it as fait accompli to council, I don't want to see a pushback. You've got to take people on a journey. And I just wonder whether our internal processes need to be, rather than giving an unreasonable expectation that this is fait accompli and we'll rubber stamp it. And I'm not sure that that's been inferred, but I just don't want it to fail through our internal processes.
Dave thinks that he might be able to help us out. But while we're waiting for that, Jocelyn, you had some part-time?
Yeah, I think it was probably just to clarify, because when your questions were when you were giving it looks like a brief to me. So obviously there's going to be, and I see on the next few pages, like stewardship, resource consents, and it shows more detail there. So I'm just trying to match up. And that was my other question when you referred to who were we, whether or not there had been agreement from both parties, but I understand that now. We're here to review, that. And that will then, well, once it gets support here, then it should in theory be sent out to other parties. Is that right? I just need to clarify, because your questions were your comments were about, for me, tying in, okay, how can we make sure when it comes to prioritization of sites of significance? Yeah, so is there wording that's needed, or is that broken down into the next bit, which is the works that I see? Work schedule, kind of like.
So the implementation plan, it's got a couple of tasks there with focus on planting restoration, but also the fencing initiatives. As a matter of principle, if it's agreed that the sites of significance be a priority, then they should be the priority.
Yeah, that's what I saw under where there was agreed already deed of settlement sites, schedule of sites of significance. So for me, it's already kind of there, but whether or not we want to incorporate that a bit more clear, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's what I mean. Is that what you're wanting, a bit more clarity around that? And yeah, I don't know, am just trying to make sure that the communication's clear when we for the best, because I agree. I think it's an awesome piece of mahi that shows collaboration at its finest for me, especially when we talk about Waikato and the history and our principles. I thought that was awesome. So yeah, if we can get that, and then it's circulated out, which might, like you said, take people on a journey, because it shows the whakapapa of Waikato and our connection back. So.
We have a note in the chat from Councillor Clarkson. I'll just read that out. And Councillor Clarkson would like to see some more work done on the section-headed restoration. At present, he feels it's very broad and unclear what would actually happen.
Comment?
Yep, so just if the Nicholas and Sarah can capture.
I just I'm just reflecting on all of the collective comments that we've heard so far, and I think that there are some areas where we could do a little bit further refinement on this, just to make sure that first and foremost, this joint committee is clear and committed to every word that's in here. And then also, I think that there would be benefit in us mapping out what are those next steps to get full approval. What committee is it from a WRC point of view? What committee does it go through? Does it go through our full council? So I'm just wondering if perhaps our best route today is to receive the report and note the comments that have been made and seek further areas of clarification, including the point that Councillor Clarkson has added, and maybe it comes back alongside that pathway to where we get full engagement and support. I think that Councillor Smith's point that this hasn't really been socialized with our council is correct, and that's that's a significant component of getting it endorsed by our full council. So I just think we might take a little pause. I don't know. Now it takes for us to do anything.
But honestly, it's been 10 years.
I know.
Like it's literally been 10 years.
I do note that.
So I think that was the recommendation from staff, is that it be received. But I think that through this committee, like today is really about us providing our feedback on the document. So if people haven't read it or come prepared to provide that feedback, that's disappointing. The original obligation set out in the agreement is this should have been done by October 2013. So I think it's honestly a little bit unreasonable to say that we haven't had time. We've had 10 years. I know that's not helpful, but I just want to put it out there.
Yeah, I take note of that. This particular document, though, has not necessarily been socialized with our council, and Councillor Smith is correct that we do need to get support of council in order to engage with this. So I do think, and I understand how frustrating and yet another pause could be. But that's what I would recommend at this stage. I just don't think that we're quite there yet. And so what I was suggesting is that we take note of the points that have been raised. We further refine the wording, and that we map out
I guess just recognising this is a co-management land strategy. So this is both of us coming to be together with our comments.
Yes.
And one of the purposes of this agenda item today is for those of us on this committee to have our comments. So I would be disappointed if, and I don't know if this is likely to happen, if going through your socialisation process within regional council, we end up with a vastly different document to what we have today. Okay.
I don't think that's the intent. The intent is to take people on a journey that they have not had anything, and to turn up on the door, bang, rather than have questions. We can have those questions, sort them out, explain, and take them on the journey to get to the adoption. So it's not to change it.
Okay. I think you might have missed my comment, Noel, just around, this has been 10 years in the making, this document. It was supposed to be completed by October 2013. So I think that's some important context for everyone around this table and who we represent as well, our counterparts and colleagues on our respective boards. So it would be good to, I guess, map out the process, Marley, and have an understanding of that. I've got other comments, but it might not, which I'd like everyone to hear actually. But before I do that, I wonder, Marley, if you can outline what your thinking is around the next steps.
Kia ora, members. Yeah, it's a good point to raise, given that this, I guess, direction that can potentially be taken off today's meeting is not, I guess, the original intended within the report. But just a couple of comments, if I may. We do have a statutory obligation to produce this document as a result of the co-managed lands agreement. And as Co-Chair Jackie has said, it's well behind in terms of delivery. Potentially, the fact that there has been quite the gap between when the initial work was undertaken, when the co-managed agreement was entered into, and now, and changes in council, there is that gap, I guess, in knowledge. The pathway forward would just have to be very clear who, I guess, has ultimate decision-making in this respect. And it would be Waikato Tainui and council. Yep. In terms of socialising to others, other committees that we have within our governance structure, it wouldn't be within their scope to be able to, I guess, make any decisions about what's in the agreement. But certainly council. So the main piece here is really, as you've already articulated, a communication piece and just making sure that everybody understands why this piece of work has been undertaken. So hopefully not a massive pause in terms of getting it over the line.
I guess just to give me a level of comfort that it won't be another few years before we get there. What sort of milestone dates do you see for feedback to be received, final draft to be developed? There's a meeting schedule on the agenda today. Would this be an item for approval at the first hui of the new JMA?
Quite possibly, because we will have a number of council meetings before we come back together as a co-governance committee. And so I wouldn't expect that timeframe is unachievable. We'll certainly have programmed meetings where we can have the required discussions with the wider council.
I guess I would be keen to see that somewhere in the resolution that we capture that we receive it. The feedback is received and will be considered, and a final draft, like a document for approval, will be presented to whatever the next JMA hui is. Just so it doesn't drag on for another year or two.
And Madam Chair, I fully understand where you're coming from. There's a number of new council. In fact, the majority of this council is new to this term. I've only been here a year, but I've been associated with this type of thing for 16 odd years now. The reality is there's a willingness within this council, current term, is to move things along. And sometimes we get frustrated by how things slow down. So there's a willingness by all my colleagues, I believe, to move things as quickly and reasonably as possible. So, and this would be included in that. But I think there's a step that we need to do before we can sign this off. And it's just the journey we need to be on.
Fair point. So Dave, in that second resolution, I'd like it to say that the proposed strategy and implementation plan be tabled for approval, consideration and approval by the partners at the next meeting. It's just looking at the minutes that come out of these hui, unless there's a specific action recorded, as they say nothing. And I guess that then just puts the onus on regional council to go through your process and for us to do the same. Look, I know that our team haven't had an opportunity to really go through the documents in full detail, so that will need to happen as well. But yeah, just good to put some boundaries on the timeframes that we're talking about.
Through the chair, kia ora, Jackie. Yeah, our intention is to hold a wānanga in February with various members of our team, the new JMA committee members that we will elect in January. And then following that, we would put a conditional draft up to the board for approval so that we can come back here and say, on our side, we've had an approval. That's how we want to progress it. Just FYI.
Kia ora mara. Don?
Actually, while everyone's been talking, you've actually mentioned, so I think it's good we've got, received the document, awesome, Mihi done, and having our teams come in and work collaboratively. So that's really awesome. And to the detail and getting it to here, and actually understanding our process together collectively, and then taking it back to the komiti matua, and then bringing it back. So all I was just, once all the discussion was happening, everyone was sort of asking the questions around the process and acknowledging, I think we're saying the same thing. And it's something that we can actually achieve if we are specific in the resolution. So understanding that, yeah, if we all come along the journey and acknowledge all the mahi done, we're going to be in the same place, with the same goal, and we've got a time frame there. So acknowledging everyone's points, that we want to actually have something. We've been here, I think, the second term, Jack, on this JMA, and it's good to actually have some of this stuff to be brought back to finalise, to complete, but go through our process. So go through our processes, kia tūtuki pai ai, ngā kōrero, ka kōrero, me kōrero tātou, kia tātou nei hunga, and ka hoki mai me era whakaro, and ka tahi ka tau era āhuatanga. So just saying, follow those processes that we know that we need to go through, and then we come back here on the state and then have that document. Koera tāku.
Kia ora, Don. It's my only concern with the timeframes is how we inform your long-term plan. And in order to make some of the implementation program happen, it requires funding. So I guess that's one of my drivers for wanting to get this to a point where it will influence your long-term planning processes and thinking. Because I think that the team have obviously put in a lot of work to come up with a prioritised implementation program. They've engaged with a lot of our whānau to get to that process. So I would hate for us to miss out for the next 3 years because we're not informing your long-term plan and securing pūtea to support some of those priority actions. So what is your suggestion for us to, I guess, advocate, get your advocacy to secure funding for some of our priority projects that have been identified in the documents?
So Marley, I went through the draft papers for our LTP discussions next week last night. I didn't see this in it. But there's a heck of a lot of projects that didn't have the detail. So is that part of it?
Well, there might be a team, a phone a friend around the room answer to that question, but just Sarah might be able to add some, if not all of this potentially could be delivered within budgets that are already held, and that may be why it isn't specifically called out at this point in the long-term plan process, and or may not need to be called out. We do have long-term plan up next, so perhaps that is the right place to have this discussion about long-term plan and how Waikato Tainui can influence what goes in.
Yep, we can do that. I just don't want these specific actions to be lost in a broader long-term plan process. Sarah, did you have something to say?
Thank you, Jackie. So you're quite right in that in the long-term plan at the moment, there isn't a specific fund for the implementation of the strategy, and I've updated that into the action update in this agenda as well. I have put forward, I think it's about $70,000 of funding for wetland fencing on scheme land, but noted that we're still working through, I guess, with where we are with the investigative stages to understand what specifically we would be seeking. But that's not to say that you couldn't make a recommendation, I guess, for some provisional funds in the long-term plan to, recognise what you'd mentioned earlier around wanting to really prioritise the restoration of sites. Like that's obviously something you've noted today, and with the restoration we know that there will be funds required for that. So yeah, there certainly is opportunity for that to be considered and included in the plan. I think in terms of working through the actual implementation and some of the, I guess, more transactional type items. I think we've got some existing resource for that, but specifically for actual restoration activity, we don't have that currently in the LTP, which has been put forward. You know, obviously this process of coming back to yourselves with this land management strategy and implementation plan is a key milestone, you know, ahead of obviously that next step in LTP. And I think based on what you've said today, obviously that's one for consideration of what is then put forward in the long-term plan to recognise that.
So just so I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, the more operational, routine sort of aspects of the implementation plan or program, investigations, those types of things, are they, so you're saying they're already funded, so you don't think you need additional funding to support this specific program, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. But when it comes to any prioritised restoration projects, that's not funded through operational budgets, and there's no existing budget that you think could be used to do that. So you're suggesting if it was important to us, which I think, well, it's important to Waikato Tainui, that we could note a recommendation that, you know, we would like to see some provision for funding for restoration, prioritised restoration projects in the Waikato Tainui Rohe in the 2024 to 34 long-term plan.
That's correct.
I think if you add that to point two, where you've got that the feedback discussed in the meeting, including noting the desire of the committee to see the provisions you've outlined, Jackie, reflected in the LTP. I think that could be added into this recommendation, or at a minimum, it's that when the next draft of this comes back, it is clear for this committee what provisions are included already and what ones may require additional either consultation. I mean, because noting even outside of the LTP process, should a year from now, this committee establish some additional priorities, there can be a new request made through an annual planning process to accommodate that.
What we've had in the past is just a straight up, we don't have funding. Council's strapped. Yes, we know we can go through an annual plan process, but there's always a barrier there.
Yep.
So I think, like, from the committee, and I think it should be a separate resolution or recommendation rather than trying to capture it in number 2, if there's comfort around the table, because you might not be comfortable.
I suppose that the challenge is that without having done the investigations, it's difficult to commit through an LTP process, right? Because we don't have the dollar figures, we don't have a real clear project that we're trying to deliver. It's still somewhat ambiguous, right? So we know the
vision
intent.
for
We know the
vision for a
intent.
restoration program.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm sure that council have many programs where you don't have the specifics locked down.
Yes, so in response to that, Nick has actually included a project within the implementation plan as an example, but obviously there'd be other restoration projects beyond that as well. But to kick things off, there is a project which is allowed for in that. But yeah, certainly I could, you know, have a look at the implementation plan further. We could maybe have a kōrero and just work through actually what could be a reasonable sum to put forward for consideration in the long-term plan, if that would be helpful.
I guess what I'm looking to have reflected in the resolution is that not as part of that second point, its own one.
I'm just looking at our LTP gurus in the room and just seeing if they wanted to make any comment about.
Well, if I can
About-
just get what's
sorry.
on my
Yeah.
head out. So that the committee recommend WRC include provision for priority restoration projects within the Waikato Tainui rohe as part of the long-term plan. So it's a recommendation. The details will need to come through, but it's, I guess, a clear view coming from the committee rather than it being lost in, oh, we had a discussion and this is one of those points. And
Sorry. I understand what we're trying to do here. I'm looking at that and it says that the recommendation that
Well,
this committee
that
is
the commi-
recommending WRC provide funding. Without knowing what the quantum of that funding is and how it sits in relation to the rest of our LTP, it is difficult I'm finding it difficult, unless somebody has comments that are going to make it easier for me. I'm finding it difficult to support that recommendation because I don't know the ramifications of that.
Can I ask a question? And forgive my ignorance, and it is total ignorance. Does Waikato Tainui match the funding if WRC provides funding? Does Waikato Tainui match funded?
I guess the restoration fund through the WRA is Waikato Tainui's contribution to co-funding because it's a product of our settlement.
Yes.
So that's often when it comes to Waikato Tainui submitting to the River Authority, there's no expectation that Waikato Tainui provide a cash contribution in recognition of the fact the entire restoration fund is a result of our settlement.
So if WRC is to provide funding, there would be an expectation that there would be some application to and likely funding coming through the WRA process.
You'd expect to pursue any co-funding avenues available.
Okay, no, that's just you share my ignorance in this funding model. Yeah. Thank you.
So do the LTP people want to say anything?
I'll just comment that we're in those discussions now. So if something's been put forward, I think it can only be recommended as a consideration alongside everything else at this moment. We're kind of in the middle of the workshop discussions on all of the work programs, and this is one part that needs to be considered along everything else. And I think my understanding is that it's a good purpose of this committee to raise that awareness about what people want each other to focus on so we can hear that message and bring it into those conversations. So if there is going to be a recommendation, I think it needs to say, yeah, consider alongside.
And I'm happy with that wording. That wording I can support.
So just as the final comment, so we've got our workshop next week. The documents have been published. I didn't see anything there. So, you know, without knowing any quantum or otherwise, even looking at the schedule of you know, what could happen.
Yes, so the document.
How do we address that next week? Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to note that those documents are the high-level draft budget.
Yep.
So there's still lots of work to go through before we pull together the full budget next year. This is just an indication of where we're at this stage in the conversation. The full detailed budget will be provided next year.
Appreciate that, but unless the councillors are given some warning next week of what's going on, it won't be on their mind to give staff direction.
But that can certainly be what you and I, and we've got Councillor Clarkson on board as well. We can certainly raise that at the workshop and ask for any further clarification of what is being provided or what is included in the more detailed budgets. And then that will come back to council last week in January for full discussion. So I certainly think that we can raise that on behalf of this committee to council, and I'm happy with that wording that's put forward.
Right, I wonder if we can capture an action for Nicholas and Sarah to provide you with that information. So a quantum, the prioritised projects and how much might be involved. And just one final thing, could we also capture, just for noting, that the operational routine elements outlined in the draft implementation plan are funded through existing council budgets? Because I just don't want that to be a barrier when we get into implementation to then be told, oh, we don't have budget to actually do those things, so the timeframes are pushing out. That come up to the
What I have done is on screen, we've got a resolution for the members to consider. I've also recorded 2 action points, which I'll tidy up after the meeting. One being that Nicholas and Sarah provide costings for prioritised restoration projects. And the other is that operational elements of the draft implementation plan are funded by existing council budgets. To note.
Can we note that in the resolutions? I'm just conscious that it's this that is recorded in your minutes.
Would you like both actions?
Just the noting one. I think the action one's fine, but that the committee notes that the operational elements of the project implementation program are funded through existing WRC budgets. Because that's what we've been told. Awesome. Thank you, committee, for your indulgence on this one. I'm happy to move those resolutions if everyone's at. Pamela second. All in favour? Against? Carried. I do have some other comments which I'll flick through the team just to give you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you all.
So we're right on time. Long-term plan. You don't look like Jane.
Kia ora, good morning all. My name's Haven Walsh, Corporate Planning Manager, working with Jane Appley over here, who has prepared the report. Jane is project managing the long-term plan. So this report is just a regular update that we were looking to bring you based on the last time we met in September, the hui in September. Since then, staff have been working on our work programs, as we've just been discussing, considering what key changes might need to be made to best give effect to our strategic priorities and strategic direction and where our investment needs to shift to. What I can say is that it's been quite challenging given the environment we're in, the economic environment. Everyone's had those challenges and our council is no different. So from our councillors and our staff and our executive team, we have had affordability in mind. So I guess the key thing that I want to just note is that I'm not necessarily expecting a whole swath of new projects to go into the LTP. Having said that, councillors and the executive team are in those discussions now to see what does get put forward. So yes, we do have a workshop with our councillors next week on the high level budget. And following that, we'll be in a much better position to know where we're at with what we're looking to put forward, what things might be of interest for engagement and consultation. And then we'll be working with our comms team to draft up a comms and engagement plan around that. And the next key step after that is coming back to council in January, end of January next year in February to go through the detailed budget. So yeah, that's a quick rundown of the report. Happy to open up for any further comments or discussion.
Open it up to the table. Hayden, when do you think would be an appropriate time to share, I guess, some detail with probably our team, maybe our governors before council meet in January to make some decisions?
Yeah, there's quick turnaround. So we do have that workshop next week. I certainly we wouldn't be in any position to come back with anything before that workshop. After that workshop, I think we'll have a steer and an understanding of what some of the key shifts that councillors really want us to focus in and put into as we prepare finalised business cases. So sometime after that meeting, potentially it would have to be early in the new year before we get together at the end of January. We'll have to see the outcomes of the council workshop next week before I'd be able to commit to any timeframes though.
Okay. Are your workshops open or are they closed? So Hayden, you've heard the kōrero that we've just had around, I guess, funding, aspirations, I guess, to support the programs that we've been working together on. So hopefully that can get carried through into your presentation. Are there any other comments or questions from members?
Just the titles, just given our current climates and just looking at the how it actually looks pretty nice. The deal, the deal and everything that you have compiled and put in, the whole bilingual approach. It sort of just takes me back to the approach that the teams have been doing, and it's that journey, and being here on that second term of WRC and seeing that the development, coming through, and actually seeing a lot of even just hearing everyone using Mōreo, it's pretty awesome. And where my thinking is at is, with regards to the council and the WRC's approach, you're obviously going to go through that discussion with yourselves and how that's going to be messaged and communicated right out in the community. And just, by choice, everyone had been doing a lot of this stuff, our mahitahi reo, connecting with the environment and with the taiao and what that actually means. But even you going through the LTP process. And I suppose where I'm getting to is it's quite a sad time actually, in the sense of the whakaaro and how that's around us at the moment. But how far we've come, and how everyone's really made a concerted effort, in these spaces. And so looking at the LTP moving forward, for me, it's like, what does that look like? What does the messaging look like on the documents? And what is the message that we're going to be sharing and sending to our communities? And what is the vision for our entities working together in that space? And what does that really look like? So it's an acknowledgement. It's a bit of and then I see the thing here, mai aroha, as well, and the really good work that's actually gone on with everybody that's been a part of all of these entities and in the communities. So it's an acknowledgement, really, it's an acknowledgement to the Mihi and the process that we're undertaking, but not forget where we've come from and what we've learned along the way, and how do we move that into the future together. So I think that's sort of my commentary is that what does that look and sound like when we're sitting here together to work that together, whether it's need or whether it's been identified left, in this space or that space. The point is we're here doing it together in a space, and let's not forget what we've actually gained along the way and what learnings we've had, and take that into the future. So that's sort of my sharing, but acknowledge the process of the LTP, because that process is the same. Having people a part of that, like the discussion we've just had, and how do we actually move and learn from our JMA stuff here, to integrate that process for us to actually continue into that future. So it's really a sharing of being in the same space and want to sort of share that, but I really acknowledge the mahi that everyone's done and that we need to continue to do. So koe taku sharing, and my message, really, it's a message Yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora, Don. I think that's a really important message from us to you to really continue with the good work that has happened over the last 3 years across the organisation, and just implore you not to step back, in light of the new government, in light of the coalition agreements, in light of what's happening in our country at the moment. Just want to tautoko Donald's comments in that regard. Jocelyn?
Kia ora. So just in terms of that, because I am mindful that, we still have, and I understand the changes that are coming, and it may be probably uncomfortable for some to comment on the changes that are going to be impacting their mahi. I'm in the same position too. But I think, but I can ask the question here, if there are any changes that come out of what government requires, how much notice would Waikato Tainui? Because I agree, the corridor around in both in Te Reo and English is something that is quite real in working for a county entity. So if changes are going to be in any documents that relate to this JMA, when will we be notified? Because I know I'm not going to be sitting there the next term, but in reality, when will Waikato Tainui and those future representatives be notified of the impacts? Because, yeah, it's just, and I get it, like being authentic, your authentic self in a position, these positions, their positions, is going to be hard. But it would be nice to be notified as soon as possible. Because this, yeah, I agree, this is beautiful. The presentation wording and how it flows into BAU, to be honest, yeah. And I heard the comments around, tagging into mahi that are already, or projects that are to be, and still to be done, that would show true partnership anyway if these changes occur. But yeah, so just, yeah, when will Waikato Tainui be notified, especially around specifically documents? I would envision probably funding, because there's probably a cost associated to that. How much notice, or when can they be notified?
Kia ora, and thank you for that messaging. I'm only relatively new to my career, so I'm used to seeing things being presented this way, and I think it's awesome that we're doing that. I'm not currently aware of any intention to change any approach from Waikato Regional Council, and my understanding, if there is a higher level change to anything that impacts us, our intention would be to inform you as soon as we were made aware. But I'm not aware of any intention to change our approach at this point.
I know, I understand where you're coming. I'm not even full term in this role too. So I've been catching up on all the mahi, and that's why I think it's very, crucial to just keep that corridor present, to say, because we do. And exactly since I first started here halfway through, that wasn't a nice environment. But Haere Tonu, and we work together in partnership. But I'm just, mindful about all the changes that potentially will impact on the mahi being done here as well. So even like having the English terms above the reo, because that would be a cost in itself, I believe, for these documents, and then the interpretations. So everything like that is going to be a cost. Just don't, and I get why you wanted to have the action points. I know that action points are quite strong within the minutes. So as long as it's captured as an action point, then that becomes part of that living document. So yeah, I'm just keeping that corridor alive, because this one is beautiful, and I know that there potentially will be changes that, our people will need to see.
I guess we would like to see the style that has been adopted for council documents to continue, and hope and trust that you won't undo that as local government. I think just noting also that the strategy did come to us in draft form, so we were able to input into it, and a lot of our thinking at that time was to try and set it up so that it's easy to support the long-term plan and some of our priorities. So I think it does that. You've heard Hayden and Pamela and Noel and Bruce, what some of those priorities might look like. And I guess the kōrero has really just reminded me about how important Aotearoa is, the things, the natural assets, the cultural heritage that we have in Aotearoa, how important that is, but how it's often overlooked in the bigger scheme of the Waikato Regional Council funding model and funding priorities. So really hope that, on the back of the botulism outbreak in Whangamarino, a lot of attention on Lake Waikare, I think a growing recognition of the role of our lakes in the lower Waikato, that's considered as part of the long-term plan discussions, from the mountains to the sea, as Peter mentioned, and that means thinking beyond Lake Taupo and thinking beyond the Hauraki Gulf and really acknowledging the importance of the Waikato River to our whole region. So just, I guess, putting that there for the councillors here as you go into your long-term planning deliberations, and just, advocating for leverage off the partnerships that have been developed, some of them born out of not good situations, like the working groups, etc., that have been stood up in response to some of the environmental incidents, and just, saying that, these are priorities for us. And hopefully that will help add some weight to where you might prioritise your funding. Kia ora.
Just to add through the chair, I suppose, another messaging, just the sharing and the uniqueness of us and where we are in Aotearoa and in the regional council, and actually. There's a lot of people actually coming to New Zealand, and so it's also beautiful to actually see bilingual, because the next step from bilingual is multilingual. And so I think, with regards to a strategy, just to really sort of to remind and to think us of that and moving that kind of thing forward in this space. Yeah. So I see a lot of the whānau have gone over. Some of the whānau have gone over to Rome and see that they're talking about all these multilingual, bilingual stuff. So just to sort of embrace our development moving into the future. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. So I think we might wrap up our kōrero on the long-term plan. Look forward, Hayden, to receiving some information when you're able to share that with us, and to our councillor co-management partners hearing what we're saying, and for that to flow through to the long-term plan deliberations. So we have a resolution in front of us that we received the 2024 to 34 long-term plan, moved by Donald, seconded by Noel. All in favour? Against? Carried. Kia ora, Noel. Thank you, Hayden. Thank you. So just quickly, our action points. Thank you for the action list, Marley.
Kia ora tātou. I might just take the opportunity to first of all thank the co-chairs for your comments at the beginning of our hui today, in reflection on our collaborative efforts and how much we've achieved, and in light of the pending changes potentially to our Waikato Tainui members. Just wanted to also take the opportunity to thank you for all your hard work in the current term, and your significant contribution to our work together. It has been a great meeting, by the way. This report on our actions, it looks a little bit different to what we've reported on previously, because it actually brings together two things: the actions from our strategic work program, and the due dates that we're looking at within this current update are up to including June 2024. and also the actions that have been listed as a result of our co-governance hui. So we've combined the two things, you'll see. I'll start perhaps first with our co-governance meeting action list, and that's at page 112. I'll just cover a few things, not everything. So you'll see that most of the historical actions have actually been completed. There are also a number of actions that have actually been incorporated into our strategic work program, and so we'll report through that mechanism as opposed to both mechanisms. And there are a few that are still either ongoing or complete. And so of particular note, and Jackie, I think I heard you mention it earlier, the update to the terms of reference for our catchment and drainage committees as a result of a request made by this committee. So that's been actioned by council, and so there is no limitation now to whom the tribe might like to appoint to those committees. Also, shovel ready project and updating, particularly around procurement, has appeared in our action list for quite some time, and Kerry Nelson comes from time to time to give that update. She is programmed in to do that for our next co-governance hui. The project itself is in the wrap-up stages, and so the next will also be the last. There has been some progress made in relation to the protocols for engagement with the King's Office, although this is off track because we had hoped to have it nailed by the end of this year. That's the timeframe that we set ourselves. We're not quite going to meet that timeframe, but we have presented a draft protocol to Te Ha or Kirikiriroa, and they have given us some direction in terms of what they would expect us to do next, and that is connect with the King's Office to discuss the draft with them. Once we have had the opportunity to get comments from both Thorpe and the King's Office, we intend to connect with staff at Waikato Tainui to also get feedback. So it's certainly progressing along, and we will continue to give you some updates in that respect.
Do you think that we could put a target to have that done by March? I know you're relying on other people, but it would be good to draw a line and say, look, we're going to try and get it done by a date.
Yeah, sure. We'll update our action plan because we're already off track. It was December 23 we'd identified, so we'll move that to March 23. And I've just had the thumbs up from Roger over there, cool. Which indicates to me that yes, he feels that's he can achieve that. So no problem. Anything else on that action plan before I move to the strategic work program?
I guess just acknowledging the work, and what's been achieved. It's great to see, a long list of things that have been completed and a lot of the actions that are in progress. They've been to the committee, we've talked about it, they're a long way along in terms of their progress. Also just want to acknowledge the site visit that was arranged to go to Lake Mihi. That was awesome. And I think including that in the annual work program makes a lot of sense. Just celebrating the achievements and being able to connect with our whānau who are actually on the ground doing the mahi, and those who are involved in leading those projects. So just want to mihi to everyone who organised that, and the invitation that we received to the official unveiling of the PO next week.
Well done. Okay, so then turning next to the joint strategic work program, you'll recall this was approved at our last hui. There have been a number of revisions made to that document based on the feedback that you provided, and that document is within the agenda as an attachment for your reference. It has been a couple of months since the program has been approved, and so we have made contact with staff who are responsible for the delivery of each of the initiatives, and we've been pleased because each of the staff that we are working with have demonstrated a genuine commitment to pick up these commitments and to progress them. There has, it's only been a short period since approval, and so progress has been relatively modest, but certainly most of the initiatives are on track. And excellent progress has actually been made in regards to the strategic land management co-managed lands strategy, aroha mai, and implementation plan that, of course, was discussed earlier on in the meeting. So I think that's a success worth highlighting. There are a bunch of initiatives that we are hoping to move forward in the coming, before the end of the year, because we have an operational hui with Waikato Tainui next week, a staff hui. And so we'll certainly be taking that opportunity to have discussions on many of these initiatives. With regard to the community preparedness target, that's currently off track, but we have been given reassurance from that area of the business that they are continuing to do their best to get in front of iwi partners to be able to carry this particular action forward, and that they hope that by mid next year that things will be back on track. So we'll continue to, I guess, have a focus on that particular initiative, given that it's off track. And then lastly, with reference to the Te Ture Whaimana reporting tool, we are disappointed that we're coming to the Co-Governance Committee with a update that indicates that little progress has been made on this and we are off track. But again, we have, if we reflect back, achieved a number of things. So we've completed the gaps analysis. We have worked with staff to identify a long list of potential metrics that we can potentially be reporting on. We've identified and agreed on the tool that will be used for reporting. And this next step really is about reconnecting with Waikato Tainui, the River Authority, and any other river iwi that might like to provide us with their view and input on what metrics will actually be the most beneficial to report on, because we've got such a long list. We can report and report and report, but what is it that is going to be meaningful for our iwi partners? That's really what we want to get to. So we certainly hope to carry that forward before the end of the year and make further progress in the new year. So I might just pause there. Those were the key highlights that I wanted to focus on, but I'm sure there's probably some questions and comments.
Kia ora, Marley, thank you. I'll just open it up to the table. Any questions or comments for Marley?
Kia ora, Marley. Yeah, just once again acknowledging the mahi that you and your team have done in Neville and Tūtahanga, actually. Even though it's good e kano I kitea hoki nā mahara, and the continuance of the whakaaro and the mahi, especially, from the kaupapa of Te Tari o Te Kingi as well, when we first moved over, and the concerted efforts to and communication that we had, because we realised there were a number of things in that space, but we continued to do that mahi, and you and your team followed up. And one of my questions is how was your team? There's not going to be any changes to the teams with everything happening, and they use capacity to help and support in that space. The reason I asked that question is we've enjoyed the mahi that we've received from the team from WRC, and if there's anything that might actually affect that, we'd sort of want to see how we can actually. It would be a loss. It would be a loss.
Would you like to put a resolution to that effect? No, kidding.
Yes.
Thank you, Donald. We really appreciate that. And just to give you some reassurance, there's certainly no proposal at this stage to change the resourcing of Tairanga Whenua. In fact, we are hoping to increase resourcing in this space so that we can do even more with our iwi partners and with our staff, of course.
There are no further comments. I just want to say thank you, Marley, for all the work that you've put in over the last 3 years, supporting the committee, really driving progress on some items that have been around for a long time. While they haven't been completed, they're a long way further along than they were 3 years ago. And we've got a clear pathway to actually get those things complete. So I just want to mihi to you and your team for everything that you do for the committee and also for the council and for us in the mahi that you do. Kia ora, Marley.
Kia ora.
Actually, sorry, through the chair, just another commentary. And acknowledging really the mahi that our teams, Waikato Tainui and WRC, are actually engaging on in a lot of the fronts that they don't necessarily come here. There's a lot of actual mahis that is occurring in both of our teams, even though it's not brought up to our space here. And so I just want to sort of acknowledge that, like Jaden and our team and Mara, with a lot of the other initiatives with the WRC teams right across that are actually working and connecting with Waikato Tainui and with our marae. So that's some of the, sometimes you don't get to hear that there is actually that connection that is actually occurring on the ground from our teams, and they're actually still doing that mahi and meeting the goals and the missions of both of our statements. So just for those te kanohi te kitea, the ones, the faces that we don't see and haven't actually acknowledged that are continuing to do the mahi, for both of our organisations, for the well-being of our environment and our people. So if you guys see all those guys, just tuku mihi to them as well from the committee, JMA. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Don. So we have a resolution in front of us that we receive the progress update report. No, that's not. Oh, okay. That we receive the report, and you can fill in with the right title. Can I get a mover? Donald, seconded by Jocelyn. All in favour? Against? Carried. Ka pai. So the final agenda item is the schedule of meetings. We'll leave those where they are, but I'm happy to receive the schedule and move the resolutions. Good to see that there are 4 programmed from the beginning. So I'll move. Can I get a seconder? Pamela, all in favour? Against? Carried. So that brings us to the end of our agenda items. I guess before we close up, I just wanted to raise a matter that has been raised in a number of different forums. I guess it's in relation to the Golden Clam disaster that's plaguing our awa in our area. It appears that there's been a real lack of communication, resourcing being provided by MPI and others who are responsible for it. I wonder if you've been pulled in to the collective conversations that Linda Tiaho and others, Jaden, have been facilitating across the rohe to try and elevate the concerns that we have around lack of signage, lack of process, lack of almost importance being placed on this in our rohe. So I just wanted to raise it here because it is something that's very important to us and that other parts of our iwi are trying to address and elevate.
Kia ora for raising that, and none of the things you've stated come as a surprise to me. I've heard the sentiments from a number of parties, and so I appreciate you raising them here. I don't personally get called into those meetings. They do happen at our operational level, and I'm assured that we remain committed attendees. I suppose from a governance point of view, we continue to raise concerns at the regional sector level with MPI about what this incursion could mean for the entire country. And so we certainly have expressed our significant disappointment with how this incursion was handled, particularly at the outset, but continue to raise concerns around how we prevent any wider spread. And certainly we've got Councillor Clarkson online, and he has a particular personal interest in this, but also has really been leading from a governance standpoint, has been leading the involvement on behalf of WRC. As I say, I know that at an operational level, we continue to be involved in the day-to-day, but echo your disappointment, particularly around signage, heading into what we know is going to be the busiest season and the most at-risk season for continued spread. So thank you for raising it.
Jaden, hate to put you on the spot, but is there anything that we should be talking about with the regional council in relation to, I guess, response to the clams this coming summer?
Yeah, I guess from, tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora. I guess from our point of view, we just don't want to be seen as the connectors. You know, we get put all that pressure always operationally to connect to everyone. Our first priority, I guess, is the tao and then our people. But tautoko, we haven't heard anything from MPI. It started off from operational level. It started off, we were getting a lot of comms, and then they just dropped off when you started asking about resourcing. So if there is resourcing that regional council are willing to put in, I think resourcing is the biggest thing for everyone at the moment from operational level. If there are resourcing, if there's where we can collaborate, connect, and work together coming into the summer season with the limited knowledge that it sounds like we all have, we're really keen for that on the ground. Because, yeah, our understanding is that there was a visual sighting in Ngaruawahia, and then there was eDNA testing picked up in Tuakau. So we'll take the assumption that it is throughout our whole catchment. So if it is throughout our whole catchment, how do we work together with the Waikato Regional Council to make sure we can at least contain or communicate to others? So that's just from a real sort of heavy operational view. And I don't know how you can filter that to the governance or tell the Crown or central government how we can pull some resources into the specific kaupapa, considering that we're coming into the summer months. And this is apparently the month, these are the months that it's going to accelerate and spread even more. Hopefully that answers.
So I guess we might call on you, Pamela, to support a call for resource from central government agencies alongside us and, excuse me, some of our other JMA partners. Just looking at, for example, the signage at Lake Karapiro, which is a major boat ramp and venue. It's pretty sad, what's there.
Agree.
Yeah, I think there's also an opportunity to capitalise on some of the sampling that's happening to collect more information about our awa, but that's something that Jaden will follow up with the team on.
And I will, we'll put an action point to get somebody from the team who is working at the coalface on this, because I am not. We'll get an update for committee members just to bring you up to speed of this is where things are at. This is where conversations are happening. We certainly are asking for resourcing at central government level. You know, it's once again, it's that incursion that then ends up falling on the ratepayer to deal with. And I mean, because we have broader conversations around Cody dieback, right? And so I think that there's bigger conversations to be had with MPI, and we are certainly engaging in those, like I say, alongside our regional sector partners. But we'll endeavor to get an update out to committee members just to bring you up to speed with this particular incursion.
Thank you. So given it is our last hui as Waikato Tainui representatives, if it's okay with everyone, I wonder if people want to share any closing comments before we close up. Just open the floor to do that.
Kia ora tātou. That'll probably be me for sure. So I didn't run this term for Te Whakakitenga, so this is definitely my last hui. Thank you for introducing me to what JMA can look like in a positive aspect. Never seen it before, to be honest, in a positive aspect. Came along in a bumpy, as I said, it was quite bumpy in the beginning. We were kind of brought in at the last minute. The other two very busy people, and now ending on a note where it's really good to see a lot of completed and a lot of mahi done, but with an authentic intention to move it forward. And I'm always proud to represent my marae, Te Kauri, but it's also always been really good to see the progression will still be the same because we still have mara in that position. We still have Waikato Tainui here at the table. So yeah, kia ora, that's me.
Yeah, so being a part of the JMA has been really good, and actually the whakaaro of the team and of our tupuna as well to try to ensure the well-being of the people and the environment. And so this is a really good example of Te Ture Whaimana and the whakaaro and how it's really being tested, you know. And so the whakaaro to our leaders that actually did think of that in that space, and to hear that here at this table, sitting there right in front of us now, you know, that's a testament to the vision and to the whakaaro of responsibility of kaitiakitanga and manaakitanga that's we've grown up with, and you don't really realise what that looks like until you're able to sit to share with everyone else and work together for that common goal and intent of values, so value-based stuff. But yeah, it's good to be a part of the team and Mara and the team in Waikato Tainui. You know, big mihi to all of our ringa hāpai e mahi ana ngā mahi painga mo te iwi, and those that have left and gone to pursue other green pastures that have been in these spaces as well. But also to your team like Marley, Neville, everyone that's been a part of the journey since we've been here. And it is a journey. It's an ongoing journey since the last term with our other fellow members. On this, I had some, you know, interesting rides. You know, coming together, having good kōrero. We got through it, and I think the same again is just being a part of the group and the team to sit and share with all the experts and technicians sitting behind that are running the machinery. So it's a real big mihi to your team at WRC as well. and you've probably got a lot of employees too. So really just heads up and carry on, but those key aspects. And just before I finish, I sort of just looking at the translation of the karakia. And just maybe I was just looking at Roger maybe to see if it might look a bit different, if you might look at it and it might sound a bit when I sort of have a look at the translation. So that was just something there, like invoking energies from. It sort of sounds a bit. And I suppose my point to that is it's a holistic system, that the system isn't beyond, it's one. And that we just we connect to that. So it's one whole system. So I suppose that's just a sharing in that to WRC. I'm not sure. But from this position, me mihi ana kia tātou. Katoa Jackie and the chairs, thanks for this term and leading us and the teams in our noho tahi, kōrero tahi and mahi tahi. And definitely got to meet a lot of your workers at the ground, on the ground out, going around the lakes and the streams, and having a kōrero and a chat with them. So big ups to those ones that are actually making that mahi possible too. So kia ora tātou.
I just want to tautoko everything that's already been said, and I think we've been saying it all the way through the hui. It's great that we can be in an environment where we can say what we want to say and not feel whakamā or that we're going to offend and just coming straight out with it. Just wanted to really acknowledge those who aren't with us right now. So, the important contribution that Tipa makes within Regional Council and to this committee on our behalf and on behalf of other constituents. Just want to acknowledge Norman. So this term is the first term that we've extended the scope of membership from the Waikato Tainui side to include our te whakakitenga whānau, and I think that the value that's been added by Jocelyn and Norman has been immense. So that's a real achievement, I guess, in this term. Also acknowledging Huirama, who's an alternate, and Moana Hamana, who's also a te whakakitenga member. Missing Jen here, Jennifer Nicol, and the contribution that she's made over this term, and to you, Pamela, Bruce, and Noel. Through this term of te whakakitenga members, we've navigated that rocky course with the opening of this whare. We have been through COVID, so that put a bit of a spanner in the works in terms of progress that we might have wanted to see here. You've had an election, so we've had a change of membership, but also some familiar faces that have stuck around, and that continuity that's provided, by our staff really helps to progress the mahi that we do. So really big mihi to both our staff from Waikato Tainui and the staff from Regional Council for everything that you do, not just to support the committee, but to really help support the restoration and protection of our awa and our people's connection to our awa. I've got a long list of all of the things that I think have been achieved over the last 3 years. A couple of things that really stick out to me, the river schools going from strength to strength. Those are things that we don't see here, but I see that out in our communities and some of the kura that benefit from that. And that growing of the next generation of kaitiaki, from very young age. So it's something that I think is wonderful. The Mātauranga Māori work that Regional Council have done and the resources that you've developed and how you've embedded that into your business is something that we've seen come through this committee. And just a number of specific projects and strategies and documents that have been developed in the process. I look forward to the Te Ture Whaimana reporting tool, whatever that looks like, being completed early next year, Mali. Something that you've heard me ask for a long time. So again, just mihi to everyone here. Thank you for all the support. It's been a real honour and a privilege to be able to co-chair this committee for the last 3 years. So just mihi nui kia koutou.
Kia ora. Thank you, Jackie, and you've summarized everything really well, as have others, and so there's probably not much I can add. I have only been sitting around this table as the co-chair and the chair of Waikato Regional Council for just over a year. Gosh, sometimes a year seems a lot longer than a year, doesn't it? But I appreciate, can I just say that I appreciate all who sit in this room and the continued engagement, the willingness to engage even when it can get a little bit hard, and sometimes really hard. Because I think that it is a testament to how important this mahi is for this region, and how our collective work is what takes all of our communities ahead. And we recognize that some of these conversations can be tense and uncomfortable at times, but we have to be willing to engage in those conversations regardless of that. Because that's about how we move all of our, as I say, all of our communities and all of our priorities further ahead. So thank you very much for everybody's willingness to engage and to help teach those of us who might be new around the table, all that has come before that gets us to this place so that we know where we're going into the future. So thank you for that. Kia ora.
I think that brings us to the end of our hui. We're only 20 minutes over, so pretty good, I think. We haven't heard anything from Bruce, so I don't know if you're unwell or. Oh.
No, he's
So just some Christmas greetings from Bruce. But with that, I'll ask Roger to close our hui for us.